All right, good evening. Thursday, we survived our first heat wave here in the Northeast. I'd like to welcome my fellow co-host to my left, Paul, just a fan. Paul, how are you?
Good afternoon, Bobby.
To my right, Nick from Milburn.
What's up, Bobby? How you doing?
I'm okay. Below me, to my left, we have Chris Russo. Chris, how are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Good evening, Bobbert.
And joining us for the first time, we have, and as Nick calls him, the man with four names, that Scoop down there in the bottom,
How you doing?
joining us from Mississippi.
Appreciate y'all having me on. Looking forward to tonight.
All right. Before I just start doing my producing thing, what's going on? Again, another quiet week as far as Seton Hall is concerned, right? Nothing really too major. We do have a couple of more player profiles to go over. We're still two scholarships short, right? Or at least two available. Is that?
Two are available.
I'm gonna assume that my buddy Sane is getting one of those, right? I mean, if
You would
ever
think,
consider
right?
giving somebody a scholarship and not having paid for college, and they're there to use anyway. I don't know.
And David Gabriel's been on the squad for 3 years, so you would think, right?
Yeah. All right, Nick, take over. I'm gonna get my producing chops done, and then we'll talk some more.
What's up, guys? So as far as Seton Hall's going on, this is the first week of the Shaheen Holloway basketball camp, and I believe it's grades 4 to 9th, and I hear it's going really well. It's my son worked it a few years back when it was Willard's, and now it just came over to Shaheen. It's a really good camp. You get a lot of hands-on experience. The players who are on campus and who are, doing scrimmages and practicing a little bit, they become the counselors and the coach. And I know some of the managers become counselors and coach. And it's a good way for the campers, some players to meet the players early, to get some continuity and, and learn and play and get better. And also it's what I'm hearing. It's also, they emphasize on fun. So, yeah, I don't know when the second week is, but if you're out there and you have a child 4 to 9, and the reason they used to do high school, and the reason they don't is because you violate like 101 recruiting rules by doing it. So that's why they do it now. You could call Seton Hall, and I guess ask for Sean, one of his assistant admins will help you. So yeah. So tonight we are going to talk about some of our players that we haven't touched on. Before we do that, I just wanted to go back because I spoke to some people in the know, in the last week or so, and everybody is telling me, and we touched on it last week, that Adam Clark is a player. He's a difference maker, that we did not have a point guard last year, that it was a disaster, that in every way, in leadership, in being a point guard, distributing, it was non-existent. And they all feel that Clark can step up to the next level and that he will help us, and we will have a missing piece that we did not have last year. Paul, did they play? He went last year. Help me. Where did he go to school again? Merrimack. And did they play Rutgers last year?
Let me check that while we're talking.
Because I know
Merrimack is in the MAC.
Yeah, I know he's played really well against some players, some good quality players. So I'm hearing, and then I'm hearing things coming out of South Orange from the practice and the games that Clark is shining right now. I'm also hearing some really good things, and we're going to talk about them later, about TJ Simpkins out of Elon. And there were two brothers, I think they were twins, and we got TJ, and I heard he was the better of the two. Greg Herendia, who used to be one of our assistant coaches, is an assistant coach, and he raves about him. And I think that's important. because I think and raves about his character, because I think when you recruit a kid from high school, you got 2 years to basically dig in and talk to coaches and find out a lot about them. When you are in the portal, it's basically like Nicole going on speed dating, because you're in there real quick. You're in there real quick and you're not sure what you're getting, So I think last year we were a little short, and Paul said this a few times. Paul's very intuitive. There's something amiss. There's character issues with this squad. I can't put my finger on it. And now more and more is coming out. And if you think about it, the only player that hit last year in the portal, and albeit a little bit because he was hurt, was Chauncey Jenkins. No one else really.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest. Everyone else was a portal bust last year. And in Simpkins and in Clark, I don't see that happening. I just think that's a good way to start it off. And we have some other players, but I look for good things from Simpkins and Clark. Anybody else? What do you guys think?
So to answer your question, I've got his numbers up. 19 points for Bud Clark against Virginia Commonwealth. 22
right, and
against
and
Rutgers.
that's it. And he was all over. Excuse me, I don't like cutting you off. He was all over. He killed Harper. Killed him.
Yeah, 32 against Stanford. So he has played well in the against good teams. And again, I think he's very consistent. We could jump right into Simpkins if you like, because I've got some notes on him. There's TJ and there's TK and Simpkins. There, TK went to Oregon. They were both at Elon. They're twins, and then TK went to Oregon. I think that TK had a little bit of a statistical edge over his brother. TJ went to a junior college before he went over to College of Charleston. Before he went over to Elon. He's very similar to Bud Clark offensively. He's obviously taller. He's 6'4", but he's another guy who gets 50% of his shots at the rim. And he's also a guy who's assists. He's got a 22% assist rate, which means when he's on the floor, he's assisting on 22% of his possessions. Now, obviously, the thing about Bud Clark was that he was everything at Merrimack. He was, the hub of their offense, and Simpkins was not that. Elon had 4 scorers over 14 points a game, so that was a much different dynamic than what Clark was looking at. Clark, I believe, averaged more points a game than Dylan Harper. Now, right. Merrimack versus Rutgers, I know, but still, he was averaging his 19.4 points a game at Merrimack, put him in the top 30 nationally. Simpkins is not a particularly good 3-point shooter. The thing that I thought was interesting is that he had a very, very bad game against College of Charleston, which actually hurt his average significantly. And he would have been a 15-plus point a game guy if he didn't have that one bad game against
29 minutes a game. Would probably translate to here, and Clark was playing 37 minutes a game.
So my question too would be, how is he going to be used? Is he going to be an off guard? Is he going to be an off guard who plays points when Clark actually takes a breather? Which, by the way, will be very foreign to Clark. Clark plays again, Nick, as you said, 38 minutes a game. So he's not used to actually taking a breather, but he'll need one in the Big East. So I think that's what I'm wondering about. How do we use a 6'4" slashing type player when we've already got a bunch of other ones? But he is a talented player, and both he and his brother have moved up to the Power 4+ conferences this year.
Anyone else? Chris Russo, anything on these guys?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think the way you talk about, especially the load management for Clark, I mean, it's a term I hate considering the way it's been used in the NBA, but you think about what the NBA is becoming. We were going to talk about the finals a little bit, but talk about two smaller market teams and how deeply they run their benches, and that's in a way what Seton Hall is going to have to be, considering the NBA and college basketball have kind of switched places in terms of parity with the NIL. We kind of talked about this before. So the deeper you can run the bench, the better. I think the fact that Clark played 38 minutes kind of offsets, I think, the conference in which he played. And that's going to be important. And look, I think Simpkins is going to be able to take some pressure off him in terms of scoring. And the important thing for Seton Hall is going to be the ability to run a deep bench. It's a team. It's a play-by-committee team. If you don't have anyone that powerful in your starting five, it's going to have to be, can we play 8, 9, 10 guys in a rotation?
Yeah, and I think on defense with that depth, and I know he hasn't done it yet, but at St. Peter's and when they went on the run, he loved playing the 1-3-1. And I think with this lineup, he might not have a choice but to play the 1-3-1 and play more up-tempo and the press. And I think as this construction of this team goes on, I think that's what we'll see. And I think it's fun to see what emerges from this. Luigi, what do you think?
Well, I think in a lot of cases, I think this happens. I think this is true both at the pro and the collegiate level. When you bottom out the way that Seton Hall did this past year, and even with the 2 wins, let's be honest, those are both OT wins against the Big East. This team could have very easily gone 0-4. And knowing that, I think sometimes I think gets a little bit missed, especially by some of like the bigger media, is a lot of that is not, you're just not rebuilding on the court, you're rebuilding in the locker room as well. Yep. We heard a decent amount about last year about discord and tension, one thing or another. There were some not particularly favorable things coming out connected to someone like Duwall and things of that nature. So knowing all of that, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if even if some of the guys who are not looking to be more than maybe a role player or a later off the bench guy are brought in just to kind of rejuvenate that sort of, I don't even like using the word, I think the best way to probably phrase it would be like the DNA of what a Seton Hall Pirate men's basketball player is going to look like not just over the next year, but going beyond that, because obviously a lot of these guys there's going to be a lot of turnover like there always is every year.
All right, comment from our buddy Frank. Art Garoli. Clark had a ton of steals last year. Yeah, man, we can use that. We can use that.
Yes, he did.
One thing I want to say, though, real quick,
he had
one thing that's really missing from this whole NIL and portal world that we're living in. Remember back in the day with the high school kids, they're drafting them. A lot of times, one kid would get drafted, said he would start recruiting his friends.
Oh, yeah.
On the AAU circuit to join them at the certain school and stuff. You're not getting that when you bring in 10 strangers again this year to play with each other, right? You're not going to get that continuity, and it's going to be hard for them to mesh. And you hope you have the whole summer for them to create bonds and whatnot. But it's not the same where these high school kids get recruited almost 2 years before they graduate, and they all know each other from the AAU circuit and whatnot.
Well, the two best recruiting classes that we've had in the school's history was the one with Eddie Griffin and Andre Barrett and Marcus Toniel. That was like a top 5 recruiting class. Eddie Griffin was the number 1 player in the country, and Fred Hill got him to go to Seton Hall. And then Marcus Toniel, who was from Seton Hall Prep, recruited Andre Barrett. So, yeah, what you're saying is 100% correct. And then the Isaiah Whitehead was good friends with Kadeen Carrington, and Isaiah and Desi played at the same high school, Lincoln. And then Fred Hill went out and got Ish from Northeast Side, and then Mike was the other one, and then Angel. So yeah, they all knew each other. And the other thing about Simpkins that no one mentioned, he's from Brooklyn. We have good luck with Brooklyn players.
Can I actually just point out, you guys brought up the camp, Holloway's camp.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that's not going to help in the short term. You're not going to see any of those kids pull a Cooper flag and go up a year, let alone 3. But that is something that I think could help in the
Yep.
long term. If Holloway's around for that long, and I think it again just goes to show the sort of it shows the advantage of sort of a mid to smaller school mentality in Seton
Yeah.
Hall and more of a grassroots organization.
Good point. Paul, who else do you want to talk about?
So, the second guy I had on my list was Jacob Dar. And this guy, to me, is probably the most interesting player that we have in the portal. Okay, first of all, he's a big guard. He's 6'7" swingman. If you look at his numbers, they're very similar to Anthony Staten McRae's in that they both took about 6 shots a game. They both make about 2 or 3 of them. They both take 3 shots a game. And Staten McRae's probably a little bit better passer. The difference is that the Staten McRae, who we talked about last week, is coming out of Miami and has played a lot of basketball. Dar is from Sudan. He had 2 years at a Division II school, which I can't even remember the name of it, but they're the Flying Wasps or something like that. Emory and Henry. Okay, and he's only had 1 season of Division I basketball, where he was playing at Rice, which is a pretender in the majors, right? The American Athletic Conference pretends to be a major conference in basketball, but it's really a very high mid-major. And so this is a guy who I think has a significant upside. He's got a 37% shooting percentage from 3, so he's probably the best 3-point shooter we have. He's a 6'7" swingman. He can rebound. But I think what I think most interesting about him is that he is only playing his second season of Division I basketball. He came out of a very small college. He's from Sudan. We've seen these guys who have come over from foreign countries who haven't really played the game a lot, and how good they can be. I mean, nobody remembers Akeem Olajuwon's freshman year when he was a big gawky guy, or Nteme Mutombo playing at Georgetown his first year when he had absolutely no footwork. And I think that if I were to pick one guy who has the biggest upside,
How
it
tall
would be
is he?
Jacob Dar.
You said he's what, 6'7"? And how old is he?
He's 6'7". I'll have to take a look at that. I know, but he's only in one of his his second year playing. Let me get his age. Hang on.
Because I'm thinking there may be a growth spurt even coming, because a lot of times that happens.
Oh, he actually had it. He's grown 5 inches since he was 18. So and that might be the other thing. I mean, he might be playing into his body too. Again, David Robinson. I remember David Robinson. He went from being 6'6" to 7'2" while he was at Navy, and it took him a year to play, grow into his body, and then all of a sudden he knew how to play that way. So he's a guy I'm excited about. I think could be a real contributor.
Well, one thing that sounds interesting when you talk about him taking 6 shots a game, maybe hitting 2 or 3. That's 40 or 50%. That's probably something you'll take from a guy who plays much more on the defensive end. But the thing that makes you really excited if you're a Seton Hall fan is he's a 6'7" guard, and he's still pretty young. 6'7" guard at the college level. I'll again go back to the NBA Finals. What surprised me, considering I didn't see a lot of Oklahoma City this year, was the shot blocking ability of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for a guard that's not that big, not in terms of height, but just not that big in general. But he's 6'6", and he has a surprising shot blocking ability. And so for somebody at 6'7" at the collegiate level, and not to mention, you mentioned the comparison to Staten McRae. So I think to have 2 guys like that on the defensive end is going to be incredibly encouraging and gives you a leg up.
Anybody remember Arturos Karnisovas? Because we played a 1-3-1, and what?
Oh, I love Arturos.
Yeah,
I loved
and
Arturos
we played the
Karnisovas.
1-3-1, and he was on the wing, and he got a lot of steals, and I could see Dar with the wide wingspan doing the same thing. Yeah, I could see. I see a little comparison there. and coming from a foreign country.
And I'm sorry, I'm just was trying to see if I could find his age. They've got him. They just list
Yeah,
him
I
as a
can't find
junior.
it either. I've been scrounging. I don't even know if that's a word. Scouring all over, what I can find right now, and I'm coming up with dust.
It also might be like a baseball player from the Dominican Republic. He might be 2-3 years younger listed than he really is. Who knows?
Okay,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
But so, and we talked about this, and we'll mention it again when we do Rivera. One of the things that I think is going to be interesting, we have Clark and Simpkins is a very similar kind of player. We have Stanton, McRae, and Dar. They look very similar in terms of their stats and their game. They're both guys who take who take more threes. They're both guys who played 20 minutes last year, got 6 or 7 shots a game. You look at Elijah Fisher and you look at Josh Rivera, who we're going to talk about next. And these are both 6'6", 6'5", slashing guards, guys who get to the basket and who have been pretty good scorers. Fisher's got 15 points a game. Rivera scored 10, 11 points a game at Fordham. So I have in my mind like 2 separate teams with a guy at each position trying to fight for playing time. But that's not at all what might happen. I mean, Simpkins and Clark together and have 2 ball handlers on the floor all the time, especially against teams that press. He might want to go and have all the 3-point shooters on the floor at the same time. So it'll be interesting to see how he manages different combinations that he has and which things work together and which things don't.
But I think what the important thing about coaching, and this was a knock against Tibbs from the players want to know their roles. They're unhappy when they don't know what their role is. So they need to find roles. And I got the sense that last year there weren't, for whatever reason, for Zion Harmon and Dual and everything else that went on behind the scenes, there wasn't really many defined roles last year. You guys agree? And this year, I think that's important. They need to know what their role is. Are you going to be a 10-minute man a game coming in and do it? Like, what is your role on the squad?
Yeah, I said that a lot. You never knew who was going to play.
Right.
You had Prince Alegbe playing center sometimes because now that was a little bit because of injuries, but they had him down low more often than I would have thought was right. You realize that I saw a stat. Felton played 16 minutes a game last year. Does that feel like Felton was on the floor that much? It seemed like to me he was very much of a role player, a spot player. Yet he was playing almost half the game.
I think there were some games that he went like 34 and other games he went like 8. And there you go. There's your average of 16. That's the sense I got with him.
Yeah.
I think you can also probably factor in that there was a lot of garbage time to be played last year.
Good point.
Right. He might have been on the floor after we turned it off.
Exactly.
And so the last guy I wanted to bring up before we go on to other things was Josh Rivera, and this is a 6'6" slashing guard. Again, not a great shooter. Doesn't take a lot of 3-point shots.
Paul, where's Rivera from?
He's from Fordham. He's coming from Fordham, but he's from Piscataway.
There you go.
So I'm hoping that he hates Rutgers as much as we do. We can sit around and tell him that he played right down the street from the rack and they didn't even bother to recruit him. It's time to stick it to the Scarlet Knights good, and that would be one thing that we could do. We could say, but he is a slasher. He is not a great shooter. He's a guy who gets to the basket, and he's a scorer. He's averaged 10 points a game at Fordham, and I looked at his numbers. He's again somebody who's very consistent. Okay, he averages 10 points a game. He got 8 or more in 24 of the 32 games. So he's not a guy who gets 20 and then disappears. He's a guy who's out there and getting his 4 or 5 baskets every night with his 21 minutes. So depending on if he gets more minutes, can he be more effective? He's going to have to earn them with the with all the other guys whose game is to go to the basket. But he's been harder to find information on. I'm a little bit more leery about him just because I haven't been able to see him, and I didn't see a huge game for him there wasn't a game where he played at Fordham where he said, "Wow, that was a signature game." So that's kind of my take on him. I think he could be a contributor. I'm less excited about him than I am about Dar or Simpkins, but as they say, time will tell.
All right, Bill from Orange. Seton Hall needs a good starting five during the season. Yeah,
I'm hearing Bill from Orange is very diverse, and Bill from Orange is not getting into it too much, but Bill's a huge political power broker. And after she won the primary, one of the first people Mikey Sherrill called was Bill from Orange. So I know he had a high-level meeting trying to figure out election strategy in November. Good job, Bill.
Miss you, Bill. Wow. So, I mean, I know, again, we said it over and over. It's you would think we hit rock bottom last year, but did we? Right? Does it get worse?
Well,
now, here's one thing I think I'm a little scared about. I read a lot of stuff about college sports and TV contracts and stuff like that, and we all know, college football rules all college sports. College basketball is a decent second place in the totem pole, so to speak. But are we going to price ourselves? I don't want to say price ourselves out, but are we going to be left behind if someone decides to do a big basketball conference and they deem Seton Hall as not good enough because we can't afford to get players? Because don't forget, they'll left UConn football behind because not so much for money, but because inadequacy on the field. And I mean, do anybody see that possibility that if there's a super conference to be made in college basketball to fight for a bigger share of this $20 million we're supposed to get, is that hey, maybe we're left behind? Anybody see that possibility?
I could see it, but Paul, go ahead.
No, please go ahead, Chris. I've been talking all morning.
Well, I was going to say I could see it, but then also, I mean, there are rumors that Villanova is going to try to go for Division 1A football, for FBS football. And I mean, if they are,
they already are though. 1AA.
Are they? Okay,
yeah,
that's already a questionable decision in itself. I don't think that program is good enough to make that jump and get decent results, at least in a short period of time. That's going to be a long haul. The fact that I don't know if it's because UConn has really taken over the conference and maybe Villanova has regressed since Jay Wright left and since NIL took over, but that's one thing that I think of when it comes to Seton Hall staying in the hunt. It wouldn't surprise me if there is a ridiculous power conference. There is but eventually, I don't know, hopefully the settlement has made some sort of leeway in stopping that. But I'd like to think there is eventually going to be a turning point when it comes to NIL, and not necessarily not paying players, but slowing things down and giving colleges like Seton Hall the ability to actually at least compete on somewhat of a level. Somebody is going to, and look, we've talked about this with Moneyball, where Billy Beane figured it out. Somebody is going to figure out how to dupe the system, and somebody is going to figure out that it's not foolproof, and that a school, I don't know how long you guys lost me for. Someone is going to dupe the system and figure out that it's not foolproof, and that either a mid-major or a relatively small to medium-sized Big East school like Seton Hall or within any given conference is going to be able to compete if they can draft correctly. It's a snowball effect. You get
Yeah.
one good class, and it's a snowball effect.
Yep. Well, one thing that the boys from Mother Seton have always figured out was how to always survive. In the 50s, we were one of the best teams in the country with Walter Dukes and Richie Regan. And then came along Art Hicks and Hank Gunther with the point shaving scandal. And we de-emphasized basketball for the longest time. And then we got Greg Tynes and Glenn Mosley, and it came up a little bit. And then along came Dick Gavitt, who is friends with Richie Regan. And we ended up in the Big East, and we struggled a little bit. And then PJ came in, and we had, our glory years and made the NCAA finals. And then we bottomed out a little bit, and then we bottomed out a lot with Bobby Gonzalez. And then Willard came along and got the Isaiah Whitehead recruiting class. And, we won the Big East. So we have a down spiral now, but Seton Hall always finds a way to become relevant again. And I like what Chris is saying about Moneyball. We've talked about that here. And this team with Clark does have the feel of a Moneyball team.
Can I also just say, I don't expect them to screw up two transfer recruiting classes in a row.
Right. Because they did screw it up. They totally, it was a disaster. Let's call it.
And the numbers tell you that it's very hard to do that 2 years in a row, to get it truly wrong, with maybe one exception, 2 years in a row.
Right. Good point.
Now I'm going to kind of go back to Bobby's original question. And so I like talking about players, but let's talk about money.
Okay.
You're Michigan. You can spend $20 million. That's the rule. You could spend most of the schools like Michigan are going to spend $6 million or so on basketball. 15% of $20 million is $6 million. That's what they got. Okay. Now, if you're in the Big East, you're a Villanova or a St. John's or a Creighton, you don't have $250 million in revenue. You probably got closer to $40 or $50 million in revenue. But you can spend more on basketball because you don't have football players to play. So you can spend the $6 million that everyone's spending. You can spend a little bit more. I see the basketball-only conferences like the Big East having something of an advantage, because even though they can give a much bigger slice of the smaller pie to men's basketball. And so when I'm thinking about this from the point of view of the Big East, I'm sorry. Yeah, somebody actually pointed out 15% of 20 million is 3, not 6. I'm a very smart guy. I went to Yale University. I just can't do arithmetic. I'm sorry about that. 50. Yes, that's right. $3 million is what they're throwing in. At the end of the day, the college school, the basketball only schools can probably compete with the football schools because all they have to do is pay for basketball. And it's a smaller pie, but a bigger piece. And so the question then becomes, can they be effective at recruiting that way? And can they keep the money that way? The other thing is the Big East, the teams that are in the Big East now are in the Big East now because they were sick of football and they didn't want any part of it. But you remember that the American Athletic Conference, which is where Rice and Temple and those guys play, where the half of the Big East that the Big East left when the Catholic 7 went away. Right? I think it was 2013, 2014. The Catholic 7 decided they didn't want to play. They were sick and tired of screwing up their basketball schedules because of football. And they said, we're only going to play basketball. And UConn went, if you remember, went with the football schools, and Temple and Rice and South Florida and all those other schools. And the Big East said, we want two things. We want Madison Square Garden and we want the name of the conference. And so I don't think that the Big East schools at Georgetown and Creighton and Xavier are going to want to go into a conference where they have to start worrying about football again. I think that UConn's something of an anomaly. They took UConn back because UConn was part of the Brotherhood. And I think as long as UConn keeps their football ambitions to themselves, they'll be fine. The next point, when they finally decide they want to go after big money football, we'll kiss them goodbye. And they can go and enjoy themselves in the Big 12 with West Virginia and Cincinnati or whatever's going on over there.
And the latest rumor is that Memphis wants in the Big East.
Well, I wouldn't want.
I make Chris happy.
The
I
next one,
wouldn't
I'm
want-
happy. Yeah,
But I wouldn't want to
maybe.
take
Well,
anybody.
maybe actually, because it's pitting her school against her kid's school. So I don't know.
But I really wouldn't want to take any more schools that have football ambitions. You know, from being from Connecticut, having watched UConn struggle, and then go 7-5 in a stadium that nobody can find, playing against schools like Rice. You know, I'm perfectly happy with UConn because I don't think their football program's ever going to go anyplace.
But unless you're like Notre Dame or Ohio State, isn't football kind of a loss leader anyway?
Well, obviously, if you look at Rutgers athletic department, once again, they lose $30-40 million a
Right.
year
That's what I mean.
of our money. By the way, that's
Right.
taxpayer funded. But so Bobby, I'm less worried about the Big East being made irrelevant. I'm more worried about the things that Chris Russo are saying, where they decide to expand and get themselves back into the same mess that they had before.
Hey, Paul, real quick, you mentioned Connecticut a lot. What are your? I know we mentioned this, and what are you hearing about a small school like New Haven going to big time football?
So I actually need, if you want me to follow up on that, an old friend of mine from grammar school is heavily involved in the University of New Haven's move to FCS. They have a very small stadium. It's about 4,000 or 5,000 people. In basketball, believe it or not, they have scheduled Penn State. Okay, they figure they're jumping right into it. They might as well start scheduling as aggressively as they can. And I think that they actually have, I don't know if it's a 2-for-1, but they're playing Penn State in their gym. So they've got a Big Ten coming to Connecticut not to play UConn. So that's going to be very interesting. I think
Talking about, Connecticut and Paul being Mr. Connecticut, Central Connecticut State's coming to play us this year.
Yeah, I mean they're actually a pretty
decent,
right?
right?
Team. They're a competitive team in that league. The problem with that league is that I don't know why they have a regular season. I don't think the regular season champion ever wins the conference tournament, and so there'll be some team that's 18-2 that doesn't get an NIT bid because they lost in the first round of the conference tournament in front of 73 people, and I'm always told that the Northeast Conference and the MAC, they play those conference tournaments for money. And whenever I see the championship game on ESPN, there's 9 people in the stands. So I don't quite understand why they where the money's coming from, except again.
And 8
ESPN.
of them are girlfriends of the players, right?
Yeah, well, the moms are always there.
The moms are there.
Scoop, so this is your first time on the show. What is your
no, wait, Bobby, second time on the show.
Yeah,
Second
Scoops
time.
has been on the show.
Yeah.
And he has escorted Nicole to various galas, and he's back here, and he's back here.
Good Lord, help me. But
I'm
yes.
asking, what's your overall perspective of Seton Hall from an athletic point of view? I'm talking about all sports.
Yeah, well, it was also. I was going to jump in on this real quick because I wanted to kind of just ask a question, and from somebody who, as you said, I follow other sports as well, and like just as an example, like from baseball, when you have like these international pools, which is kind of, I look at them kind of similarly to this, where you've got the international pools, limited amount of money you can spend every year, but one of the things that can be done there is trading out of that pool. And I'm looking at these transfers, do you think it might make it better or more streamlined in, or more parity in college football if perhaps, let's say, this guy's transferring, in order for the team to accept him as a transfer, they have to give, X number, or at least negotiate, X number back to his old team?
It's an interesting question. I mean,
Yeah.
Really interesting question.
I mean, there was a point, considering the monetary value, that would actually make sense. There was a point where, that's the thing, it's gone so far back to the other way, where
right.
One of the great examples was Joe Flacco going to Pitt, and Dave Wanstead wouldn't let him transfer to another FBS school. And that was the thing. The coach had to let you transfer in order for you to be able to go to another FBS school. Otherwise, you had to sit out a year. So that's why Flacco went to Delaware, and he ended up getting drafted out of Delaware. So that was the one. I actually wanted to go back to football for a little bit. Although, Brian, I got to say that's a fantastic point. I was just going back to Paul's thing about football. Here's the thing: we're talking if Villanova's going to FBS, that's going to hurt them in the first place, considering the revenue sharing within the program. And that's for a program that's already struggled. And the other thing is, when you look at the remainder of the Big East, if any of those schools created a football program, any of those other schools aside from UConn created a football program, and I think UConn, as much as they struggle football-wise, is still going to draw better than New Haven is. You look at every other one of those programs. You look at Creighton, and you'd have to compete with Nebraska's like an hour and a half away. You've got DePaul's got Northwestern right there. Marquette has University of Wisconsin within an hour and a half. You're going to have Butler's going to have Notre Dame, Purdue, Indiana, any number of schools. Xavier has Cincinnati in the city. You've got Georgetown, and Maryland is right outside D.C. Nova is not going to be as good as Temple, or maybe even for to an extent with FCS, UPenn. You've got Seton Hall will go up against Rutgers, or even Army for that matter, and then Providence against whoever. The funny thing about UConn is that, you got New Haven now. If memory serves me correctly, because I think UMass went back to FCS, the only other FBS program in all of Boston College. Now, that's a significant program and has had some success, but it's still got by Northeast and New England standards, that's pretty far away. It's probably an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But it's funny, you go back to all of these programs that did leave the Big East for, and I can name any number of periods, not just the AAC, but you look at Boston College, Miami, Virginia Tech, West Virginia, Cincinnati, Louisville. There's a number of moderately successful programs to highly successful programs, and that if Villanova went into that would kill them.
Absolutely.
Well, I remember 10 years ago with my mentor driving him down to Raven Stadium for the CAA football media day, and Villanova was there. So they're in a pretty. And don't forget, now Nick and Paul might remember this. There's a pretty significant. His name's escaped me at the top of my head right now, but there's a pretty significant Eagles running back who's from Villanova.
Miles Sanders.
What did you say? I heard Eagles. What did you say?
Yeah, there's a pretty significant Eagles running back from like the 90s who played at Villanova. So they
Villanova. You talk about Westbrook, I'm guessing. You talk about Brian Westbrook, I'm guessing.
Brian Westbrook, yes.
Was Brian Westbrook Villanova?
Yes.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
And now to Chris's point, I think that one of the things that's interesting is that you need to talk to some degree about the interest in college football as a whole in a certain area. In Philadelphia, the football team's the Eagles, right? I mean, pro or college, that's who they're following. I got an opportunity to go see Penn State play Ohio State at Beaver Stadium this year. A friend of mine got tickets. And it's insane. I mean, there's 100,000 people. Everybody's got Penn State gear on. They are tailgating from 8 o'clock in the morning till a 3:30 start. I mean, it's just crazy, And guys, who's making lobster tails on their grill? Somebody's – it is the thing. In the Northeast, we haven't seen that for college football yet. Rutgers tried it and got good for a little bit, but when they're not good, they're not good.
But it's still a thing to tailgate there. I've never been there, but the whole boardwalk experience, it's a thing.
Yeah, but but Nick, I went to a Rutgers football game and they were showing Rutgers in the NFL, and they showed one of the Rutgers graduates for playing for the Dallas Cowboys, and the fans booed.
That's
because
funny.
They're all Giants fans and Eagles fans. And
that's funny.
So it's like, I think that before you can, and Chris is certainly right in that the only college football in Connecticut right now is UConn. My alma mater was really good about 100 years ago, but not so much now. And so
Second most national championships behind only Princeton. They have the same amount of titles as the Yankees.
absolutely.
That's
and
awesome.
but if you start after they invented the automobile, it goes way down. Uh,
When they invented helmets, right?
oh yeah, but and I could wax philosophically. I want to do my own podcast about this. No one will watch it, but I want to do it. But the point is that Connecticut could be a college sports for football if UConn ever got good and knew how to market. I think Rutgers might be able to do it in New Jersey. They were getting closer when they had Ray Rice and that team.
Well, no, they had I was going to say shitty. They had a lousy schedule back then. They were awful. They got in the Big Ten, and then no, come on.
No, but when
they played nobody.
I like how he goes, I was going to say, and then he
I
says
was
it.
not, yeah,
I was just going to point that out. Like,
Yeah,
I was going to say, and then he goes,
that was a very important
they were awful. I don't want to hear that. And anyone remembers Stoney's in South Orange? Stoney's,
No.
Chris, yeah. Chris
It
Russo
was
remembers.
around my freshman year and then shut down. I went, our PA, I think, who just got married, actually. That's off topic, but actually took us I think, first weekend of classes.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you notice anything in that unfine establishment?
I don't remember, no.
I went, my daughter was a freshman. Dad, let's go to lunch. Pick her, go to Stoney's, having a great lunch. I look up, and now this is a Seton Hall place. Seton Hall's plastered all over the place, except there's a picture with Ray Rice in a Rutgers uniform running a football. So I pointed out to Stoney that it shouldn't be there. Stoney said tough, and I've never went back to Stoney's. So you know what?
Nick,
Stoney's went out of business.
I was at Rutgers versus Louisville.
Right.
When Louisville was 9 and Rutgers was 13. Both teams are undefeated, and I have never been in a crowd that crazy in any sport. And I've been to the Final Four, and I've been to the World Series, and I never saw a bunch of nuts. The people who were there. So yeah, I mean that was the time when the Big East the South Florida was the big game.
Yeah.
But
my guy Kevin Brock called the winning touchdown that day. Tight end.
If Schiano was such a good football coach, how come he couldn't get a job anywhere else?
Oh, Schiano is terrible. I mean,
Let me tell you, one of the worst. I tell you, I've met coaches from college, pro, and whatnot. One of the worst people I have ever met, Greg Schiano.
Worse than Carino? You don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that. You got to work with the guy.
I remember.
But I want to go back to Scoop's point, though.
Hi.
Back before before every major league team had its own farm system.
Yeah.
The way baseball worked, and this is now in the 30s and 40s, there were a lot of independent minor league teams. They would sign guys, develop them, and then sell them to the next level.
The Newark Bears, right?
Yeah, the Newark Bears. The old Milwaukee Brewers did it when Bill Veeck owned them. The Kansas City Monarchs.
Monarchs, see that? We're
Babe Ruth
dating ourselves.
came out of the original National League Baltimore Orioles, and that's the reason he's called Babe, because it was Jack Dunn adopted him.
Yeah, Jack Dunn. Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we're going to start to see that kind of relationship between mid majors and some of the major colleges. Ryan, again, to your point, if I've got a kid and I'm Merrimack or Elon or Fordham, and this kid has been there for a year or two, and I have him signed for one more year, do I have the right to sell him?
Right.
And
it's also because it's not just because I know I mentioned the international free agency thing, but I mean that's also how players transfer over from like Nippon in Japan. In order for that to happen, there's a posting fee that gets paid back to the original team. So like this is not an uncommon practice in shifting, and if college sports is going to say we want to model ourselves more like professional sports, this is I think a possible way where they could make that oh sorry Chris, what's up?
No, go ahead. I was just gonna when you're done.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say because like we've been saying, and I don't know I don't know if that would be a negotiated fee. I don't know if it would be a flat rate like it is when it comes to the Nippon posting situation. I didn't have that, really in my mind as to, what would make most sense, but it was the closest thing that I could think of. And it's really the main thing I think is, how are you going to prevent those teams if they're forced to let these guys go? How are you going to prevent those teams from, basically getting left holding the bag?
Truthfully,
while they go and chase the bag.
Seton Hall's already, not from a player standpoint, but from a coaching standpoint, they already kind of have had that relationship with Iona.
Yep.
Willard came from there. Bozzella
Yep.
came from there. DeFalco came from there. Iona was kind of a pipeline.
Well, if you guys remember this,
didn't President Nair come from there too?
Yes, he did.
That's what I thought.
And
Yeah,
our
you
AD came from there too.
There you go.
if you guys remember this, obviously, I know Chris was on the episode. I know Scoop probably wasn't, else he watched it. I mentioned this about a month ago, where Seton Hall has 5 coaches in the college ranks that are graduates. So why couldn't they all band together and group and make each other better? And if we have, like for example, if we have a player like Gus the Bus who wasn't going to work out for us, but he's 6'10" and has a decent amount of ability, send him down to NJIT, right? And maybe they had, and actually NJIT has a guard who was in the portal who maybe we could have used on our level. And they all kind of work together and help each other's programs out.
Well, we
By
kind
that
of
logic-
did that. The point I made
That's what I'm
earlier
saying.
was Greg Herendia was our assistant coach, and he has a good relationship with Sean. He's assistant coach at Elon, and Sean talked to him supposedly about the character of the players.
Well, by that
And that's
logic,
why
then
he
it would
signed
also be
Simpkins.
NJIT, Wagner, St. Peter's. I would say those are 3 that I could think of off the top of my head that also have pretty good relationships with Seton Hall in terms of at least playing them during the early part of the year, but also instances of universities who have taken Seton Hall assistants. You look at Bill Meyer, you look at Copeland. It's happened.
The thing is that's kind of sad about this conversation is we are talking about these teams with no regard whatsoever to academics at all. But we're sending Gus Bus down to NJIT. Does he want to be an engineer? Is he looking to major in fine arts? I think I don't think, I'm not going to knock us because I think this is the conversation that we're having now. But the whole, when you get right down to it, the academics have fallen so far off of the conversation, despite our 3.237 grade point average.
537. I know. I was trying to read it backwards too.
But we're talking about these guys as if there's no academic part of their lives at all, and that might actually be the next thing. We might get to a point where these guys are basketball players for the college, and any academic interactions they have are completely optional.
Well, let me
Look at
just
the NBA draft.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
Go
Ryan.
on. Go on,
I
Ryan.
was just
Go,
going to
Luigi.
say, okay, you go first, sir.
Oh no, sir is dead and buried. My name's Nick. You could
Okay.
go.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I remember an interaction that I had back my sophomore year at Seton Hall with one of the basketball players. I'm not going to divulge the name, but one of the basketball players, and I didn't recognize him at the time. So I went up to him and we started talking, and I asked him,
What year did you graduate?
I'm class of 22.
Okay.
And I went up and eventually just asked him that, and he literally said basketball. Like there are guys who go there, and that is their focus. It's not everyone is I think it was Romero Gill was one of the guys who really went after his education after he graduated, or after he finished playing.
Well, that tells us who it wasn't. But I.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say. Oh yeah, I was just going to say, look at the draft. The second round of the draft is on right now. Look at everybody who has been picked. If they're not international, they're probably a one and done player. It's kind of back to what it was, in the era probably just post LeBron up until maybe a little before the NIL, where these guys are going to go to college for a year, or they'll transfer or something like that, and that's usually what it is. They'll go to college for a year. Now, there are some guys, God bless them, who are going to go back and get their degrees because it is, even if they have money, a good amount of money after they retire, it is a good skill to have. It's something to be proud of, but it is absolutely true. I will say, I'm going to take a quick aside, by the way. Cool, maybe one of the coolest things this week, VJ Edgecombe got picked, I think, 3rd overall, and it turns out my senior year in the fall of 2019, the Thanksgiving tournament, the Junkanoo Jam in Bimini in the Bahamas, I realized, I looked it up, I saw it, I was like, VJ Edgecombe's from Bimini. That's insane. It's a tiny island. And Wilner Lewis and I called 2 games for the women's team from what seemed like an elementary school. And it seemed like an elementary school gym. Turns out that is where VJ Edgecombe not only went to school, Gateway Christian Academy, that is also where he has used his NIL money from his 1 year to donate 3 scholarships.
Wow.
So, just an aside, but just a fascinating thing.
Now, great segue there, Chris, because I was going to mention also with Nick before mentioning the name of Jerry Carino. I woke up this morning on my phone with a headline from the Asbury Park Press, and I get it on NorthJersey.com. Rutgers basketball fans take note. Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper could soon fund the team. So, again, another thing we're missing on our program, we got one player who's making money right now, and is a great guy. Obviously, it's Mamu, and hopefully he gets a decent contract this year. And I'm not saying he should do it and fund their team, but we all laughed at the fact that Bailey and Harper, and Rutgers was awful last year. Right? I think part of that you can see now could have been Ace Bailey. It just seems like he's a little,
Well, that's what they're talking
entitled.
about. Yeah,
entitled. If that's the word. Now, I've had Harper a few times on my own sports broadcast, so I have my own opinion about him. But the moral of the story is, you get a couple players go to the NBA, go to the big dance, and they're going to help your program, and we're missing that as well.
Bobby, I thought of you today because you had been talking for the last since we've been doing this, how disappointing Rutgers was for having Harper and Bailey and having a lousy year. And then there's a stat, and this is the great Coach Peichel. The only team to have 2 players taken in the top 5 of the NBA draft and not make the NCAA tournament is Steve Peichel's Rutgers Scarlet Streakers.
Hey, didn't he also have Cam Spencer at one point, right? Wasn't he a Rutgers guy? Before he went
not the
UConn?
same year, though? No, not the same year.
Not the same year, but another guy who did very well. I don't know if he's probably playing pro ball somewhere, but another guy he had in his team and, didn't do much with him, it looks like.
Yeah, I took some sort of Schadenfreude-esque satisfaction in the fact that the Scarlet Duo went in the top 5 on a 15 and 17 team.
By the way, there's Nicole's favorite non-Seton Hall Biggies player, Ryan Kalkbrenner, has been drafted by the Charlotte Hornets.
Now, Duncan Nick hates Kalkbrenner, right? I mean, I think he despises him with a passion.
Was it? Is it him?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I made the mistake of suggesting that him getting into the NCAA tournament would be a reward, and I think I got 3 minutes of Nick Morgan's view, which was not particularly complimentary toward him.
I will say it was pretty funny watching the coverage, and I think he's a very good player, and he could be very successful in the NBA in Charlotte. But they made a Dirk Nowitzki comparison, and I thought, come on. Well, but not only the talent is one thing, but I think the other thing is the fact that Dirk Nowitzki was not a true center. He was a power forward. Kalkbrenner's listed as a center. He is a center. So that doesn't. Now it's like it's an evolving game. I get it. It's a lot of it. Look at somebody like Jokic, but I don't see it.
Like you said, Jokic was right now he's the best player on the planet, and he was a second-round pick.
Yeah, well, that's what they talked about this evening. Yeah.
What's that, Paul?
I said Kalkbrenner lacks quickness. So I guess what do we got, Bobby? 15 minutes left before you got to wrap this up.
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes.
So what we got a new topic now, or because I have one if we don't have one.
Well, let me just do one more thing. Speaking about hated Seton Hall opponents, who was the kid from Xavier that was really hated? The guard.
Mikura?
That kid was the biggest punk, J.P. Mikura. Yes. Horrible. Remember his senior year, remember Timmy Ice started that whole chant against him, and every time he touched the ball, JP whatever sucks, and JP dropped 35 on us, but can't remember any Big East player that we hated more than JP. And Kadari was just a joke why they even booed him. They should have been booing themselves. Horrible fan base. We don't have the money to pay the kid, so we're going to boo him for taking more money than he's ever going to see in his lifetime. Great mentality, Seton Hall fans. Did Frank Acciardia booed him? Frank, did you boo him? Bill Hathaway didn't boo him. I know that. Nicole was on. Nicole from vacation.
No, here we go.
She couldn't keep herself. She could not. The over-under was 10 o'clock, so over wins. She got out of whatever bar she was at. Now she's couldn't help keep herself. Couldn't.
I was going to give you the other one, Nick. I was going to say for a while, I would probably say, and look, there's a recency bias, and then the fact I was there too, but I was going to say Theo John just for getting into the scrap.
Oh, he was a hoodlum. Yes, Theo John was a hoodlum. Strangled Mike in the Big East. Yeah. That kid was a punk. Yes, he might be worse than Mikura. You're right.
Frank asked me the question. No,
I will say again that he was very polite in talking to me and even addressing. But I asked him gently, but about the situation I asked him gently, but he was very polite about it, and he kind of played it off and said we're focusing on this year. When I asked him about it at media day the following season, it's very, very respect. Look, on the floor, there was an issue, but you never know what happens.
I respect the fact that you asked him that question. This group of WSOP kids wouldn't ask him any tough question.
Yeah, I mean,
they wouldn't even know who he was.
To be nice enough, probably, to say, just to be respectful about it. These guys are media trained, and not to mention, they're human beings with
absolutely
a smart sense. Yeah.
Frank said he didn't boo Kadari. Did you boo Isaiah Whitehead, Frank, when they booed him? Another disaster from our fans.
Cam Jones, Marquette to the Spurs.
Interesting.
Another Big East guy.
Yeah.
He's a player.
That's what's pretty sad about our program too, fellas, is that do we have anybody that's NBA ready on this roster? We are so far behind.
Talking at the end of the year.
We won 2 games last year. Who's NBA ready?
Do we have anybody G League ready?
Yeah, not even.
Not even G League ready.
If they meld, talk to me again at the end of the season.
Yeah.
You never know. I'm not saying there's going to be a draft pick on this team. I wouldn't be surprised if they play well enough or at least improve a good amount, which I think they should, because there's just a lot of guys who are going to have a chip on their shoulder, a lot of guys who are coming from mid-major programs, or even look at, hey, if you're coming from Miami, you've got something to prove. And so, it's a group of guys who are going to be meld together. They're going to be hungry. They should want to be able to play together and not to mention improve the program. And whether it's going to be sticking with the program or going to another one, or potentially going to a professional team, whether it's NBA or Europe or whatever, it's a lot of hungry guys. So by the end of the year, I don't know, there could be a couple of guys who could end up in the G League, or maybe as the 12th man on an NBA roster.
Hope so. Yeah. Hope so. So, Paul, what's our new topic?
Well, I wanted to start by talking about
Anything but hockey. Nicole's not here. Anything but hockey.
No, I'm not going to talk about hockey. But I was talking.
And Chris is a hockey guy. Come on.
What?
I wanted to get you
Chris
guys'
isn't a
opinions.
hockey guy.
He's a hockey
Call
announcer.
hockey games for a living.
You are.
He's a hockey
That's my
announcer.
Luigi's
primary
a
job.
hockey
I
guy.
call
I don't
games for 2 hockey teams. Yes.
So we were talking about the Scarlet Duo, and were they ever really as good as the hype? And it's nice to say, Steve Peichel's the worst coach in college basketball if he couldn't win with two top 5 draft picks. But I really wondered too how much hype was around those guys, and if it was really justified. And the thing I wanted to ask you is today ESPN came out with their first bracket of the 2026 season.
Oh,
They are
God.
doing bracketology now. Florida's their number 1 overall pick. Now, they haven't put on a set of sneakers yet, let alone had a practice together.
Well,
But and you look at Florida's lost a lot of guys. A lot of the teams are completely redone. So my question to you is, it's my opinion, and then I'll ask you guys. It's my opinion that this very preliminary assessment with no facts sets people's minds as to who's going to be good and who's not going to be good. And ultimately, these things become self-fulfilling. And I think it hurts college basketball, and I think it hurt us in the 2023-2024 season when people just had in their mind that the Mountain West was good and that the Big East was down, and they didn't let our 20-win-plus season impact our ability to go to the NCAA tournament. So I guess my question is, do you guys think that that these opinions get in people's heads and ultimately reinforce themselves, or do you just think I'm a crotchety old man?
Gets in the dumb people's heads, yeah.
Do you think it gets in the committee's head? Do you think that people who are actually supposed to be picking might continue to have that reinforced?
well, on Chris's point, I don't think the committees are some of the smartest people,
That
Look at-
wasn't where I was
mean,
going, but I
the
disagree
way
with some
they've
of the
been
decisions they
doing.
made. Sure.
I mean, yeah.
I don't think it necessarily, maybe very subconsciously, I don't think they knowingly make that decision. I'm not calling them stupid. I question some of the decisions they made. I'm not calling them stupid, but it happens. I don't know, but again, we see this every year in basketball, football. It's the way too early. There's always the way too early rankings now. So I don't know. And then some schools this year it didn't really happen. I know NIL's changed a lot of things, but it's the whole idea of this too shall pass. And that's why I love college basketball as much as, a lot, any given, most sports. And it's because of talked about it at the NBA with the parity of it and the idea that anything really could happen. And so to see like a Loyola Chicago or a Lehigh or a Mercer or a Florida Gulf Coast, that's, I'm hoping, going to come back. It's the idea of this too shall pass, and we will eventually have a Sweet 16 with not just power conferences.
And the truth is, Chris, to your point, at the end of the day, you still got to win 6 games if you want to win the national championship. Everybody's got to win 6 games. Everybody knows what they have to do. I guess there's a certain amount of frustration when I start to see almost a herd mentality, especially, 2 years ago, everybody got high in the Mountain West, Colorado State, Air Force. And I think that conference got 6 teams into the tournament.
Yeah, because they were CBS. Because
and
CBS was hosting the tournament, and they were all on CBS. That's the biggest crock in the history. They got cheated because of that deal, and they all got eliminated early.
And that was the thing. The
Nonsense.
Big East got 3 teams, won the national championship. The team that got snubbed won the NIT, and the Mountain West was all done by Saturday.
Yeah.
So but I guess I imagine these guys are trying to do the best that they can.
The only one watching Mountain West basketball at 1 a.m. is Nicole Gizzi, and no one else could care less about it.
Well, her and Gamblers.
Yeah, maybe she's both.
There's somebody who's got Colorado State in the back end of a parlay who's up at 1:00 in the morning, worried if they're going to make their foul shot, so they win by 11.
Look, we all know that somebody right now is betting between Bethune-Cookman and Minnesota State Mankato in terms of women's water polo.
There you go.
Who's favorite?
The favorite? Nobody.
Oh boy! Oh boy! How does the Yankees doing? Right? Pretty bad again. Are we going to win again, Yankees?
I don't know who we is.
They
Yankees.
I like that hat,
won
Bobby.
last night. They
Bobby,
they won.
Did you ever get that other hat, the manatees or whatever they're called?
Oh yeah, I wore it yes the other day. Yeah, the mammoths. Yeah,
The mammoths.
yeah. Second best logo in sports. That's what we have to have a show on. The best logos in sports. Everybody put their top three in.
I like your hat, Mr. Blackjack.
Thank you.
Is that the first time anyone's called you Mr. Blackjack?
Mr. Blackjack.
I'll take it. I'll take it. So anyway, so here we are. Our summer's just beginning. July 4th coming up. What else do we have?
I think we were going to mention the finals.
What's that?
I think we were going to mention the finals. Huh?
Yeah, let's talk about the finals.
Well, you were just talking about baseball. We got the home run derby and all-star game going to be not too long after the 4th.
Well, yeah, Acuna committed.
So, Chris, what did you think? Oklahoma City and Indiana.
Well, I talked about it on my podcast this week. In terms of the TV ratings, I doubt it was incredible, but I thought it was good news for the NBA in that 7 different teams have won in a row. It's been 7 different NBA champions the last 7 years. It's the first time that's ever happened, and I think we've gone from the Celtics winning 8 in a row, I think, in the '60s to this. Mm-hmm. And, you have one team dominate each decade, I think is particularly impressive. And then I don't know if Halliburton being out really, honestly, I don't know how much of a difference it really makes because A, I think Siakam was the best player for Indiana in that series. And B, you look at the points above average that McConnell, Mathurin, Nembhard, any of those guys finished with, and it totals probably more than Halliburton would have added in the remainder of that game. So I don't know. I think another thing to note is that it seems like no matter where the NBA goes, if you get a Game 7 of the finals, it's still pretty defensive. Like 103-91 is not a score you would imagine for most NBA games at this point. Mm-hmm. But you look at this one, you look at the last finals Game 7, Cleveland and Golden State, Spurs Heat before that, the Lakers and the Celtics, I think it was like they scored in like the 70s, something like that, in the Kobe versus Big Three era. So that's what I like at least. But the defensive battle, and then I'd say probably on top of that, the incredible thing of Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, getting its first professional championship in 150 years of North American professional sports.
Well, let's be real. They only have one pro team.
No, they only have one pro team. I get it, but I'm saying, but they only got a team in 2008, and you look at it's Oklahoma had never had a Big Four pro team before, and so it's like saying a pro team from Wyoming won a championship.
Now, Chris? What did you think? You said from a basketball point of view that Halliburton going out wasn't necessarily a big deal. What do you think? How do you think it hit them psychologically? Because I saw him crying on the court. Do you think it kind of did they go into a funk a little bit, or after he came out, or?
A little bit, but I think they'll probably also tell you it's not an excuse. Which I don't think. Look, truthfully, you look at it, nickel like this. Last year, I mean, they knocked out the Knicks in the second round to get to the conference final. It took 7 games, and half the Knicks roster was hurt by the end of that series. Mm-hmm. So it happens. But then you look at it on the flip side, it's, again, a point for Nick. The Knicks-Celtics series, that when Tatum gets hurt, the Knicks are pulling away in Game 4. They're about to go up 3-1 in that series, and they probably would have had it at that point. So I don't know. It's kind of an unprecedented thing, but I don't think there's an excuse for Indiana either. And truthfully, they turned over the ball time and time again in the second half. And Bob Myers said it on the halftime show. You look at Nemhard, you look at McConnell, you look at Mathurin, and obviously they stepped up, but they do have probably the best backup guards in the league. And Halliburton probably plays the fewest minutes of anyone who's considered a star in this league because of how deep they run their bench. So I don't think they have an excuse for losing that game. Not to mention, I mean, game 4, it looked like OKC was probably dead and buried, and maybe the Pacers were going to go up 3-1. So I don't think there's an excuse. I think they should be very proud of their season. It's the best season they've ever had, at least since leaving the ABA. But no, I would say it was well earned by OKC.
Well, if you remember, they were winning at halftime, so I think that halftime break kind of sapped their adrenaline at that point, and then never really got started once the second half got going.
I didn't see it when Halliburton got hurt. I was at the Paper Mill Playhouse watching Little Mermaid of all things. But Oklahoma
you may have to turn in your man card for that, Nick.
I'm sorry, what?
You may have to turn your man card in.
But not the husband card. So sometimes
no,
no, not the husband and first man card. But you could have Game 7 in Oklahoma. You could have had Reggie Miller and George McGinnis, and they weren't going to win that game. So that wasn't going to happen.
Well, because to me, I think of it almost as a reverse Willis Reed. The famous game in the 70s where Reed comes out of the locker room. I think he played what, Nick? 3 minutes?
Not much. Hit his first 2 shots.
And then Clyde took over in that game.
And then
had like 37, I think he had
another one.
But it was almost just a psychological edge. You wonder if you lose a guy in the back of your mind, you're thinking. And again, and I'm not making excuses. It's more of trying to an explanation. A team like that who's thinking, where's Halliburton going to be in this situation?
Well, think about it. If it was any other part of the leg except the Achilles, maybe he gets a little Miyagi-Do in the locker room and comes back out again.
Well, the truth is, he was also hurt going into that game, and they probably shot him up.
Right,
so
game
it was
6. No,
he
was hurt going into game 6, and they Miyagi-Do'd him with a shot or whatever for game 6. So how many shots can you get?
Yeah.
Plus, overcompensating on the calf is what injures the Achilles.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. And it was not a high score. Again, I still think Siakam was the best player. That's the reason Siakam won. It's almost like Tatum and Brown last year, where it's Brown won conference finals MVP, he won finals MVP. Okay, you might think of Tatum as the superstar, but Brown was the most valuable player. And it was the same thing for Siakam.
Well, if I'm my buddy there next to my right, Nick from Melbourne, I'm in a pretty good spot right now because the whole Eastern Conference is falling apart, which leaves 2 teams, the Knicks and the Cavaliers, and maybe the Pistons.
But we don't have a coach.
We don't have a coach yet.
And we don't have a coach yet. So.
New York Post said that the Knicks are widening their search. But, yeah, I think Chris Russo just said it. You can't find a guy to coach that team. I don't know what – and again, I can't imagine why they would get rid of Tibbs without a plan. I can understand if they think that it's time to get a new coach, but you got to know who it is before. You've got to have some idea. You've had to been talking to somebody.
When that happened, I thought it was going to be Johnny Bryant, and now I'm hearing, like I said last week, that they were upset with him because he didn't follow their analytics to the T. And but it got him to the NBA Finals, so he did something right. The NBA did the semifinals. Got him 2 games away from the
conference finals, certainly.
Yeah.
Hey guys, before we sign off, something I want to bring up that I noticed the other day. I was reading about it. What are your thoughts about? And we all are sports fans. We all are involved in sports broadcasting, whether it be on this podcast or like Chris doing play-by-play and Scoop having your own show and whatnot. Just you know what I'm talking about. What are your thoughts about ESPN chastising Rebecca Lobo for saying America is great on a WNBA broadcast?
I would need to probably know a little more context. If they're punishing her just for that, I mean, I think ESPN just doesn't want to, understandably, just doesn't want to delve into political stuff. And I guess that could be considered vaguely political. I don't.
What did she say America was great in reference to?
Yeah, that I didn't get that far into the conversation. But then my first instinct was, you're the same.
Wait, I think Luigi knows. Go, Luigi.
Yeah. So basically, there was a game going on last weekend. It was between the Indiana Fever and the Las Vegas Aces. And excuse me, sorry. Lobo was basically saying that she didn't agree with a call that was made toward the end of that game, and Pam Ward said they disagreed with you. And then Lobo said, "Yeah, they disagree with me. I disagree with them. That's what makes America great."
Oh, God.
Right. And
the same channel that has Stephen A. Smith ranting every freaking day about crap, and they're gonna chastise her for saying that.
For saying in America you're allowed to voice your opinion, and that's what makes America great.
I think it's those particular words that are probably what make them think that way. I don't think it's the actual opinion. I think it's probably the way she phrased it, which, God, I hate talking about politics.
Yeah.
Before a few years ago would probably be considered a pretty normal,
Right.
not normal. It would be considered, nobody would think twice about it. But I think maybe just the way I highly doubt she meant to say it in a political sense. So I understand, I guess, in the back of ESPN's mind, because everybody gets probably pretty sensitive about these things, regardless of your political opinions. But I don't know if they have maybe asked for her to clarify first. Maybe they did. So I don't know. But I don't. It doesn't sound like she meant it in a political or a divisive context.
Bobby, how long did
just
she get
my
suspended
point,
for?
if you're in the last couple seconds of a WNBA game, you're calling a WNBA game, you're like irritated or concerned or whatever about a call. If I'm in that situation and I'm talking about something in a high leverage situation, the last thing I'm thinking about is politics personally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Bobby, how long did she get suspended for?
I don't know if she did or it was just a chastiser, and her producer said something in her ear.
Oh, that was it?
Yeah. I'm not sure if there's a suspension or not.
So a slap on the wrist.
Yeah, but it made headlines, though, I guess.
Well, it might not have even been a slap on the wrist. It could have just been a caution. Well, I mean, what's your source? Where did you hear this from? Because it was like a tabloid type, or was it? Or remotely
I think I read it online. One of the usual stuff I go CBS, Fox, or.
Okay. Well, sometimes you hear these things and people leak these things, and if it was from a producer, then somebody definitely leaked it, and then it would also, again, it's just, that's probably something. I wouldn't be surprised if it was someone who's just saying, maybe just be careful a little bit with the wording, just because we don't want to, step on people. We know you didn't mean it that way. Just kind of take it easy, which is another. I get it. So there's probably 7 different filters through which this was put out.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if this is just distorted for news purposes.
All right, fellas. Final thoughts. Scoop, your second time on the show. What are your final thoughts of anything that's going on in the world, in your sports world?
First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for having me back on. I want to say shout out to our missing in action friend Nicole for having me.
No, she's not missing. She's letting us know where she is. She is on the balcony, listening to us, coffee in hand.
Yeah, and I doubt it's a coffee, but that's okay.
It might have some coffee in it.
It might be coffee with Kahlua or something. Come on, Nicole.
Just comes in straight anger.
That's hilarious. But again, thank you to Nicole for suggesting that I come on. Thank you guys for having me on, and looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few weeks, and seeing what happens next time I come on. Maybe there'll be a 5th and 6th name that Nick from Milburn will have for me.
Yeah.
That's good. You just got to get to White Castle first.
Got to get to what now?
Does nobody remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
I remember it. I
All right,
remember it.
there we go. White Castle. Never mind.
I'm
Wait,
so
Right.
one of my friends was a very good friend with the Seton Hall assistant coach, and they took Herb Pope to White Castle on South Orange Avenue for the first time. And Herb did not. He did not. His digestive system did not react
God.
too well to White Castle. But yeah,
What White Castle alone just sounds like something that would make me sick. Like just the name of it just does not give me a good feeling.
thank you, William.
Thank
William,
you.
have
I
you
had to
ever had
wait.
a White Castle?
I'm pretty sure Bill from Orange has had a White Castle.
There used to, there was one in Orange on Scotland Road. He had to have. Coffee in hand. Yeah.
Who's Yal?
Y'all.
Y'all. Southern drawl.
Well,
She
Southern-
has to have
Southern Bayonne.
hijacked that from me because that I don't think she's been to Mississippi. I don't even know if she's even been to one of the surrounding states from here. So she has to have hijacked that from me.
Chris Russo, final thoughts.
Well, it's entertaining, interesting week, and I think there wasn't a lot of news, and White Castle is in Orange, yes, and well, I was going to say there's the White Castle that's either East Orange or technically Newark on South Orange Avenue, but nonetheless, we took what little news was there from a Seton Hall basketball standpoint, and little news or no news, it made it entertaining.
Guess we lost 4
He
games.
went to White Castle.
Hungry. He went to Whataburger. He's from Jackson. I've been in Jackson. Whataburger is the place to go there. Nick from Milburn, final thoughts.
So Ryan, Scoops, Luigi, Don Corleone, thank you for a pleasure. Thank you for finally coming on. Nicole recruited you for like 15 weeks, and you finally said yes. Chris Russo, great having you back. You had so much to the show. Paul, you're a rock star, and Bobby, you're the rock. And thank you guys. A lot of good stuff, and I look forward to it each and every week.
I just realized we're all Italian, right? Have you realized that?
Oh, yeah.
Was Luigi Italian? Like, because I don't know what name.
I don't think he actually is.
His name's really isn't Luigi?
His name definitely isn't Luigi.
Is?
No.
All right.
No.
He's honorary Italian because we have Gizzi, LaMonica, Romano, Gorenti, Blackjack, and Russo. That's pretty. We should be honorary, grand marshals of a parade one day.
Tony Sopranos would be proud.
He would.
Yeah, semester and a half at Seton Hall.
Paul, I'm sorry, Nick. Final thoughts.
Ditto to what I just said.
What was I going to say? I think he just gave it.
Sorry. Paul, final thoughts.
so Bobby, you were talking about a possible guest.
Yes, unfortunately, I realized that now I'm in my workflow here at the resort. It's getting busy. Next week will be slammed. This week it was kind of early for the summer to start. The summer, 10 weeks of summer season. But I'm part of a dinner theater show every Wednesday. I'm the DJ of the show and of the dinner itself. So I realized that every Wednesday until past Labor Day, I'm pretty tied up. And Darryl Jacobs, a friend of mine, and I think Chris knows him as well, may know him. He's a friend of
I think we're friends on Facebook. I don't. Yeah.
He's a college basketball announcer. Does a lot of St. Peter's games, but also travels all over the country. Works for ESPN and CBS Sports. I thought it was pretty cool to get his perspective on the landscape of college basketball.
Now, does he write to us? I did a quick Google search and I saw a guy with that name that was a writer for the New Jersey Urban Times. Is that
I think
right?
it's the publications he put out. And I actually met him a long time ago when I used to do the broadcasting for the ABA. He was coach for the Jersey Express, one of my first seasons of doing their games. That's how I got to know him. And then, he does a lot of stuff with Patterson. He had a little free broadcasting camp a couple years ago, and I was a part of that and whatnot.
Because he just did a very good article on NIL and how it was going to work, some stuff about enforcement. And when when you mentioned his name, I just wanted to see who he was. So if you do get him on, maybe we can have a little bit of an NIL question. I know Nick's been talking about creating a team. How do you build a team and allocate money in an NIL era? I'm constantly going back to enforcement, and how do you deal with the vitamin water guy who has kind of different rules than everybody else? So if we can get him on for that I think would be terrific. So that's my final thought.
That's gonna be our T-shirts we get for the fall. It's gonna be Hall Hoops and Happenings with a picture of a vitamin water bottle with the Ghostbuster sign going across it. And the back of the shirt will be a QR code so you can follow our show.
That's right. You can donate money. Well, we can put the QR code. You could donate money to the Pirate Blue or whatever it is.
Also, I have a Seton Hall actor and a famous actor and a Seton Hall graduate who said he would be a guest on our show named Kevin Anton. Played Harley Race in the Von Erich movie and other stuff. He's a good actor. And since Nicole doesn't know who he is, I've never got the approval from our executive producer. But then again, she didn't know who Adam Sandler was last week.
Yeah, she doesn't know who Robert Redford is. You can't.
She didn't know who Robert Redford was. Oh my God!
You can't go by her.
So look up Kevin Anton. He's willing to come on. He's a good guy. Loves Seton Hall. He was in a couple good movies. Might be,
He
a good
did. I
guest
looked
in
I looked at his IMDb. He did do. And I should know. I actually know this episode. He did an episode of Sopranos. Apparently, I think he was Gianni Sacks' son-in-law's best man.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
So we're gonna have to override our executive producer if you guys want him.
And by the way, she just verified that Ryan Luigi Woodham's Don Corleone is Italian. Okay.
Oh, I thought.
And how would she know that?
Now, R.J. Lewis, it says here, was not picked, but he can't go back to college, right? Because he didn't undeclare.
He cannot go back to college. I don't.
Okay, so he's headed toward the G League and a lot less money than he would have gotten from the vitamin water guy.
He's in the same boat with Quinn Ewers as far as big mistakes of Saints. As the Clash would say, should I stay or should I go?
Yes.
And these guys, and I was kind of, I knew with the Miles Powell stuff, his first year when he decided not to go in the draft, I was kind of behind the scenes in that, listening to some stuff from some people. And they tell you, the NBA scouts do tell you, they don't lie to you. So, yeah. Isaiah Whitehead knew he was going in the second round, not the first round. They don't lie to you.
Yeah. I have to believe that R.J. Lewis would have done better with an NIL deal from St. John's this year.
Yeah.
Than
Or Seton Hall, NIL deal from Seton Hall.
Even if he signs a two-way contract.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, a G League two-way contract. Go ahead, Chris.
Absolutely.
I was just going to say I got to duck out. Apologies, guys.
Bye, Chris.
Well, thank you, Bobby, for
Bye, Chris.
your hosting and direction. As always, it's very professional.
Very professional.
And Nick from Millburg, you're the guy who makes the show go.
I don't know about that, but I have fun. And everyone is welcome on this show. Nicole's inviting bus boys and everything else. But, Frank Accardia, and I'm saying his name wrong, he's been in a bullpen for 12 weeks. Frank, you're welcome to come on.
Accaroli, I think is how you pronounce it, right?
Accaroli, yeah.
There you
by the
go.
way, before we go, my final thoughts is I'm very thankful that, I got my hearing back a little bit. So, and as far as this platform, I had the same issue with the blockage and the privacy thing, but, let's try this for a little while and see how it goes. Apparently or maybe our next show, whether it's next week or the week after. Next week's July 4th. It's gonna be a big vacation week. Maybe either Nicole or Nick will try to log on and see if that's maybe the same thing happens or not. We'll see.
Is there a way we can do Facebook Live without doing the webpage? No? And then have all of us share it? No? Is that the problem, that we're private because of Seton Hall Pirate page?
No, we're private because something that happened to Facebook happened to change that somehow makes these videos, and it's happening to a lot of people because I've been doing research on it, that they're just coming out on individual Facebook pages as private, even though I have it set where anything I post on Facebook should be public for everybody. But there's some glitch now with these videos. Now, obviously, Restream is not StreamYard, but it's still happening. So it appears to be a StreamYard, a Facebook issue. We'll see.
Oh, well, thank you, Bobby. I'm going to go. We'll see you guys all next week.
I got to go DJ now, and again, have a great week. If we don't go on next week, have a great July 4th, and we'll be back soon after that.
Thank you, guys. Happy 4th.